بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم أما بعد. To continue the study of كفاية المتعبد وتحفة المتزهد of Al-Hafiz Al-Mundhiri, we have now reached where he talks about the supplication of Al-Istiqama. Hadith number 3 of Jabir radiallahu anhu, he reported, كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يعلمنا الاستخارة في الأمور كلها كالسورة من القرآن. That the Prophet used to teach us al-istikhara in all of our affairs, like a surah, like he used to teach us a surah from the Quran. إذا هم أحدكم بالأمر فليركع ركعتين. When any of you intends to undertake a matter, let him pray 2 rak'ahs, and then say, ثم ليقول اللهم إني أستخيرك بعلمك وأستقدرك بقدرتك وأسألك من فضلك العظيم فإنك تقدر ولا أقدر وتعلم ولا أعلم وأنت علام الغيوب. اللهم إن كنت تعلم أن هذا الأمر خير لي في ديني ومعاشي وعاقبة أمري، أو قال في آجل أمري وآجله فاقدره لي، وإن كنت تعلم أن هذا الأمر شر لي في ديني ومعاشي وعاقبة أمري، أو قال في آجل أمري وآجله فاصرفه عني واصرفني عنه واقدر لي الخير حيث كان ثم ردني به ويسمي حاجته. That he will make this dua, and this dua is known as the dua of al-istikhara, and this hadith is reported by Imam Al-Bukhari alone. As I mentioned last week, we discussed the rulings pertaining to Salatul Istikhara and this prayer. Now, most of this is taken from the article of Sheikh Abu Ammar Yasir Al-Adani regarding al-istikhara. So he says here, or before we start with that, Sheikh Abdul Razak Al-Abbadi mentions istikhara is something that Allah bestowed upon the Ummah of Islam, and it came as a replacement for that which the people of Jahiliyyah used to do. Whereas they used to use arrows to seek luck or decisions, or releasing of the birds, and other than that. So the people of Jahiliyyah, they used to use arrows, or they used to use birds, and try to make the decisions like that. But Islam came to replace that with Salatul Istikhara. With Salatul Istikhara. And Istikhara, what does it mean? It means to seek good from Allah. It means to seek good from Allah in that which He permitted, in a way that is reported from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So it is basically you're seeking good from Allah in that which He made permissible, in a way that is reported from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. How is it done? A person prays 2 rak'ahs, which are non-obligatory. Min ghayri faridah. 2 rak'ahs, which are non-obligatory. So 2 sets, with the intention of istikhara. Now this intention obviously is in the heart. Articulating what your intention is a bid'ah. The intention mahalluha al-qalb. Its place is the heart, and to articulate with it is an innovation. So you're going to pray 2 rak'ahs with the intention of istikhara. The ruling of that is that istikhara is recommended by consensus of the scholars. It's something which is recommended, mustahab, by consensus of the scholars. There's no one that says it's wajib. Istikhara is done in that which is permissible, in affairs which are permissible, such as marriage, business, and other than it. Also, it could be done in recommended things. If you are doubtful regarding an affair being better than the other, then you could pray istikhara to see which one of these 2 affairs which are recommended is better for you. Istikhara is also done when one is determined to do something. When you finally have that determination, intention to do something, that's when you do istikhara. That's when you do istikhara, whether it's regarding something permissible or recommended. That's why it says in this narration, إِذَا هَمَّ, when he intends or embarks on something, then he should do istikhara. Does it have a specific time? There's no specific time for istikhara. There's no specific time for istikhara. But whenever you finally have a need, or you have an intention to do something, and you want to seek the help of Allah, or seek the aid of Allah, then in that case, or seek the good from Allah, then in that case you pray 2 rak'ahs of istikhara. You pray 2 rak'ahs of istikhara, and then when you finish the salah, you make this dua. You make this dua. Now, we mentioned from the signs of it later on how a person understands which act to do or what is his what he should put forth. Now, it's befitting for a Muslim, before you praise istikhara, to free himself from any kind of desires. To free himself from any kind of desires, and to not allow his desires to take over him. And should not let his soul do that what he inclines towards. Why is that? Because you find sometimes a person says, I'm going to pray istikhara to get married to the sister, for example. And his heart is too attached already. Whether he does istikhara or not, his heart is already attached to her. So before you pray istikhara, you clear your heart from anything which is going to cause some kind of inclining towards something. And then you pray istikhara. And you put your trust in Allah. and the affair has nothing to do with desires or his heart's comfort, rather is connected to that which he is going to do, and the affair is already predestined by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when you pray istikhara, you'll have a feeling or certain signs that you will see that will make you feel good about the decision or make you turn away from that decision. Now he makes istikhara regarding something, then if he feels it hasn't been made clear to him, can you repeat istikhara? Yes, you can repeat istikhara. Repeating istikhara is allowed. So you pray the istikhara and you don't know if the affair is still made clear to you and where your decision should be, then you can repeat istikhara again until you're at ease with your affair. As for what is read in it, like which surah you should read in Salat al-Istikhara, in these surah guys, there is no evidence to say you read a specific surah. Whoever says that you have to read a specific surah in Salat al-Istikhara, he has to bring evidence for that. And because there's no evidence for that, it's not allowed for us to recommend something which is a legislative ruling without evidence. You cannot say something is recommended, which is a legislative ruling, except with evidence. So one cannot say today you read Surah Al-Ikhlas or Surah Al-Kafirun or this surah or that surah, except in evidence. Except in evidence. And we don't have any evidence for that in regards to recitation in Salat Istikhara. The dua of Istikhara, the scholars differ if it is done before or after the salam. The correct stance is done after the salam. Why? Because the Prophet said, ثُمَّ لِيَقُلْ. Then he should say. Thumma shows that it is done after the act. So he should do it after he finishes the prayer, after he's done the prayer, and he has finished his salah. Then right away, he reads the dua. Right away, he reads the dua. Now the dua should be done right after the salah. Directly after it, there shouldn't be a fasil, something between it and the dua. Rather, you should read it right after. If he forgets to make the dua right away, and he is still sitting and hasn't got up from his spot, then he can make the dua. But if he has got up and he stood and he's left and he started talking to someone and got involved with other things, then in this case, he prays Salat al-Istikhara again and then he makes the dua. Then he makes the dua. Why? Because thumma shows at-ta'qib. Thumma shows is done right away. It's done right after the Salat wa tartib. It is done right after in order and right after. Then he says, also, if a person has to make istikhara for numerous affairs, let's say there's 3 things or 2 things you want to make istikhara for, then if these 2 things are separate affairs, then you'd pray Salat istikhara for each one of them. For example, you want to buy a car or you want to buy a house. You'll make istikhara for the car and then you'll make istikhara for the house because they're not connected. The house and the car is not do with each other. But if these 2 things are connected to one another, an example he gives is if you want to travel and you don't know if you should use a plane or a car. Now traveling is connected to the plane or a car. You can make istikhara now and ask Allah, oh Allah, if this travel of mine at this time is good, by plane, then make it easy for me, for example. Because they are connected, the travel is connected to either the plane or the car, and they're connected, you can make the dua by asking for both of them at the same time. Now, what dua do you have to say? Is a specific dua which has come from the Prophet ﷺ. You cannot make any dua. You have to use a dua which is specific from the Prophet ﷺ. Why? Because the Sahabi, Jabir radiallahu anhu, mentioned that he used to teach us Salat dua al-Istikhara like he used to teach us a surah from the Quran. Like to teach us a surah from the Quran. The scholars get from this, it is a must. If you want to do dua al-Istikhara, they use a specific dua. Now there's no problem for someone to read the dua to you or for you to follow them. Someone who doesn't know how to read or someone hasn't memorized the dua, it's okay for someone to read the dua to him and repeat after him. Or for him to read it from a book, or for him to read it from a paper. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. Allah does not burden a soul with that which it cannot bear. Now, also a person may do istikhara and it may not be answered. He may perform Salat istikhara, make the dua, but it may not be answered. Why? Because a person may be falling into something which prevents from his dua being answered. Because istikhara is a dua. Istikhara is a dua. So he may fall into stuff that which prevents his dua from being answered. For example, he eats haram, he drinks haram, he deals with haram. Then this kind of person, he's done a preventative from his dua being answered. Or for example, he transgresses in his dua. He transgresses in his dua. Or he makes dua with sin or cutting ties of kinship, other than that. Now this is the way you pray istikhara. You pray the 2 rak'ahs with the intention of istikhara, and then you make the dua. But there's some people, unfortunately, they do innovative ways of istikhara. We're seeking help from, or seeking good from Allah. one of the forms that they mention is that or some of them, they innovate in regards to this salah, that they make it a condition that you must see a dream after istikhara. And there's no evidence for this. Some of them, they say, if you see a dream after istikhara where you see green or white, that means go ahead with the act. But if you see red or black, then that means it's bad for you, stay away from it. There's no evidence for that. So they say green or white means good, and black and red means bad. Also, some people, they have another way they do it, where they take beads. They take those beads that they do tasbih with, and then they count the amount of beads on it. If it's an even number, that means go ahead. And if it's an odd number, they say don't do it. This is obviously innovative. There's no evidence for this. And there's other people also, and you may see this in your culture and other places, where they open the mushaf, and they open it to any page, and if the page they're reading is ayah, verses of mercy, they say go ahead with it. And if the page that they opened up to is a verses of punishment, they say stay away from that act. And they say this is a sign for them. This is obviously innovative. There's no proof and evidence for this. Now, a few benefits regarding istikhara, some side benefits. If a person asks, can I raise my hands in making dua al-istikhara? Yes, you can, because dua al-istikhara at the end of the salah, if you do it after the prayer, it is a dua, and it's allowed to raise your hands in dua. And it's allowed to raise your hands in dua, as the Prophet said, that Allah feels shy that a slave raises his hands to him and he returns him with nothing. He returns them back with nothing. Thus, if one makes dua after the salam, he's allowed for him to raise his hands if he wants. Also, can you pray salat al-istikhara at times of prohibition, when the salah is prohibited? Then Imam Al-Uthaymeen, he mentions, the salat al-istikhara is regarding an affair which cannot be delayed until the prayer time exits, then he shouldn't delay it, he prays it at that moment. But if you can delay it, and it's not something urgent, then you pray istikhara when the time prohibition exits, when the time prohibition is done. Another benefit from Imam Ibn Bazin, istikhara is done at times of doubt or confusion, either in affair itself that you're determined to do so, or in the wasila, the way to reach it. So now it's important to understand, istikhara is not only done in the affair you're doing, but also the wasail. You could also do istikhara in the wasail, the means to something. As for something known that it is a nearness or act of obedience, or that is permissible and there is no doubt in reaching it, then there's no need for istikhara. For example, you don't pray istikhara to say, can I pray this way or not? Salah sallu kama ra'aytumuni yusalli. Pray the way you see me pray the Prophet. You don't pray istikhara, should I pray the way the Prophet prayed? No. Or should I fast this way? Or should I perform hajj this way, or whatever it may be? When it comes to those kind of affairs, there's no istikhara in it. Istikhara is only in things which a person is doubtful in, or there's some kind of confusion in it, and he wants to do it. For example, he's seeking the hand of a woman in marriage. There's more than one woman out there. So this specific woman you're seeking her hand, you're confused, is she good or not? So now you're going to pray salat al-istikhara. Or if he is doubtful in certain issues, like example, traveling to a land, he does istikhara if this land is good for him to travel to or not. Another way that we mentioned, istikhara is done for wasail, the means. And Shaykh bin Baz mentions an example of that. For example, someone wants to perform hajj. He has two ways to go to hajj. He does istikhara to say, should I go this way or that way? This way might be more dangerous, but that way might have less water, he says. So you pray istikhara to see which means that gets you to hajj is better for you. And that's also a reason for you to pray salat al-istikhara. Like we mentioned, the plane and the car. You can travel with the plane or a car. You pray istikhara, should I use a plane or should I use a car? It's a means to get into your goal. Another benefit, Imam Al-Uthaymeen, he mentions, istikhara is only done by the one who intends something. It is not allowed to do istikhara for someone else. You cannot entrust someone to do istikhara for you. You cannot entrust someone to do istikhara for you. And that's important. Some people, nowadays they entrust people with everything. They entrust people with everything that they possibly can. And istikhara is not one of those things that you can entrust someone to do istikhara for you. So you cannot tell someone, go pray 2 rak'ahs, and then make dua istikhara, and in that dua istikhara, I'm entrusting you to do it for me. You cannot do that. You cannot do that. So this will stop regarding this chapter, and we'll continue to the next class, inshallah. If there's any quick question while we're preparing, we'll take